Hello everybody and welcome to Fantasy or Prehistory. Today we're discussing Game of Thrones and predictions for Season 8 and the last two books in the Song of Ice and Fire series. So let's get right to it. Number one, we haven't seen the last of Petyr Baelish, or at least we haven't seen the last of Aidan Gillen, the actor who plays Littlefinger in the series, because there's no way Arya will pass up the chance to use his face. So my prediction is that Season 8 will begin just like Season 7, with a scene involving Littlefinger, who will actually be Arya in disguise. Number 2. The Hound will complete his character arc by defending one of the Stark sisters with fire. The Stark sister will most likely be Sansa. There's even a theory out there that Sansa and the Hound will become lovers, with the idea that the Hound is actually a virgin, and that Sansa will be the one to finally show him love. I don't buy into this theory, but I do believe that there is a connection between the Hound and Sansa because of several of their conversations at King's Landing when she was betrothed to Jeoffrey. The Hound must complete his character arc by getting over his fear of fire, and I think Sansa is an important part of his character development. He seems to have seen the innocence in her that he once had. He once wanted to be a knight, and she once wanted to marry a knight, and he tried to warn her that the world is not the fantasy they both once wanted. As an aside, I also think that the Hound will defeat his brother the Mountain in battle, but probably only with the help of Arya. My reasoning for this is that the Mountain is still on Arya's list, and the Hound and our favorite female ninja need to have some climactic, culminating closure towards the series' end. Number 3, Euron Greyjoy will not only bring the Golden Company back with him to Westeros, but also a weapon that will even the odds against Daenerys and Jon Snow. The weapon will likely be the Horn of Winter, which he already possesses in the books. We need a turning point for the human antagonist in the series, and Euron is our last great psychopath of 3. This means he has to step up and exceed the shock value of both Jeoffrey and Ramsay. For the sake of story itself, Euron must surpass the level of fan hatred garnished by our first two evil villains. There's always a psychopath dominating the hatred in an ASOIAF novel. In Winds of Winter, it will be Euron, and in A Dream of Spring, it will be the actual Night's King. What most fans don't know, however, is that each of these arch-villains are revealing a little bit more about the last, penultimate villain, the Night's King himself. Now, if you are a regular subscriber to my channel, you've already seen the proof that Ramsay, and almost certainly Jeoffrey too, were receiving visions from either the Night's King or the Great Other, which amplified their psychopathy and influenced their actions. I've maintained for years that Euron is already a knowing servant of the Night's King or the Great Other. The Great Other is not mentioned in the series, but we can assume the Night's King occupies the same role. My reasoning for this was based on plot and story alone, for the most part, because great writers start developing their antagonist from chapter 1. And since the primary battle is between ice and fire, the main antagonist must be the Great Other, or in the show, the Night's King. It would be amateurish for the antagonist for each book leading up to the last to be nothing more than douchebags we happen to meet along the way. They must have importance to the larger plot. In my other videos, I provided proof that Ramsay received the same visions as Jojen and Bran about the Greyjoys coming to Winterfell. I've also shown that his marriage to Sansa was a part of either the Three-Eyed Raven or the Night's King's plan. I now have more proof that Euron is on the Great Other's side. It's not just that the story of his metaphoric rebirth at sea parallels the story of several historic figures who went over to the dark side, or that he's a user of magic who's constantly seeking greater power and knowledge. But George Martin has released several chapters of Winds of Winter. In one of these, Euron tells his brother that his ambitions go beyond the rule of the Iron Islands. Euron sees himself with a mysterious queen, and all the gods of Westeros and Essos bowing before him, including the Stranger, Death, the Seven, and even the gods of the Rhoynar and the Stone Men. There is but one god often mentioned in the books missing from his vision, the god of the Others and the Whites, the great Other himself. Later, Euron says he needs a new bride because his former lovers were not worthy of him. Who could him be, if not the only god Euron sees as something other than his servant? Number 4. Bran is a reincarnation of Bran the Builder. The Hodor death scene first convinced me of this suspicion, but in Season 7 we've received new proof. Bran tells Meera Reed he remembers being Bran Stark, but he also remembers much more since he became the Three-Eyed Raven. Now, since he says he remembers, and not that he's seen or envisioned, it implies multiple past lives. We're told that Old Nan and others constantly get the various Bran Starks mixed up in their heads. But though there are also a lot of Aarons, Johns, and Robs, we never hear of similar mix-ups about them. This is because it's Martin's style of literary foreshadowing, subtle but unmistakable. Number 5. The Night's King is one of many reincarnations of Bran the Builder born over the past 10,000 years. This one decided that man is a disease which must be stopped from wrecking the planet, as in most of Martin's other stories and novels. Since the time of the original Night's King, or at least since the birth of Brynden Rivers, the reincarnations of Bran who have come into the world have died before their prime and failed to take up the Three-Eyed Raven's mantle, including Ned Stark's older brother. This is likely due to the influence of the Night's King, who would like to be the only master psychic and uber-ward so he can defeat all of mankind. This is why the Three-Eyed Raven, aka Brynden Rivers, led Bran to the window, causing him to become crippled. Brendan's time was running out. He was nearing his end, and he had to find a way to receive a successor. And the only way to stop these brash Starks from rushing into a battle like Robert's Rebellion or Robb's War was to cripple him. If you're asking, how can Brynden have been a reincarnation of Bran? He's a Targaryen, not a Stark. Well, Brendan's mother was a Blackwater, one of a few families expressly known to regularly wed and reproduce with Starks. They even have several Neds, Robbs, and Brans in their lineage. It seems that more than one incarnation of Bran can exist at once, and the good side of Bran couldn't get a reincarnation past the eyes of the Night King except by planning one in a family outside of Winterfell. Lastly, I want to pose a question. In the Season 7 finale, Arya mentions that Littlefinger lied about Catspaw being Tyrion's. She says, "You said that it was Tyrion's, but it was yours." Now, is this a Hollywood plot hole? Is there a reason Arya doesn't come out and accuse him of hiring Bran's would-be assassin? Littlefinger is supposedly a master strategist, so it makes no sense for him to give an assassin his own weapon. Tyrion even says as much when he's accused of the same thing by Catelyn. Only a fool would use his own dagger to plan a hit. Littlefinger is many things, but a fool is supposedly not one of them. It makes even less sense that he gave the same dagger to Bran in Season 7, as this would only cause the boy to ponder over the weapon's implications. Plus, he doesn't seem to have had enough time. The assassin comes shortly after Robert's departure from Winterfell, so Littlefinger can only have just heard about Bran's accident, if at all. So how'd he get an assassin and his own knife all the way up to Winterfell, several times as fast as it took Robert to get back to King's Landing? Remember, dragons and horses and genries don't move as fast as Learjets in the novels, just in the shows. I'm still leaning toward Joffrey having hired the killer, as is implied by Cersei and Jaime's conversation shortly afterwards. If Littlefinger had previously given Cat's Paw to Joffrey in much the same manner as he gave it to Bran in order to get on his good side, then maybe it explains why Arya didn't come out and say that he attempted the assassination and use it as one of the accusations against Littlefinger in the trial. Littlefinger may have known that Joffrey hired the assassin, or at least that Joffrey was the last to have the knife, but he put the blame on Tyrion instead because he saw more profit in a Stark-Lannister war rather than a Stark-Baratheon war. Or at least this makes a little bit more sense, but I want to know your thoughts because I'm still on the fence. Anyway, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already, and I'll see you right here next week.